Hey, we're going to put on an ATS on the new Grenadier. This is the FOX replacement. It's a direct bolt-on. So it might look different than the ones you've seen in the past, but it is going to bolt directly on. And you'll be able to tell by this little chingus here is all built in. And you've got a little offset spacer here. So let's install this. You really only need a couple of things. 21, we're going to pull off this end here. So on the newer ones, the nut is actually welded on there. If not, you're going to need to, if you got one of the older ones, you're going to need to use a 21 on the other side. So that'll be a nut and a bolt. And then on this end, we're an 18. You're going to keep this little spacer. Just throw a zip tie on there and you can put it in your garage. You can throw this out like a year later. And the new FOX one looks like this. You're going to notice on this side here, there's an adjuster. We're going to want to point that adjuster backwards, at least I do. And then this upper spacer, which is slightly longer, you want that on the top side. So let's cut off our zip tie there. And FOX does recommend a medium Loctite. Don't necessarily have to do it. These were not Loctited in there, but we'll go ahead and put a drop of medium on there. You really don't need too much. And what I'm going to recommend you do is come in here and make sure that this fits in between here before you get too far along. So you can see that it's actually a little bit of a tight fit in there. So one thing that you can do is you can clamp this in a vise and you can squeeze this down. And what I would do is I'd spray this with some Windex and that will enable you, hopefully that'll position that down in there. If not, we might just need to pry this open slightly with a crescent wrench, pop that in there, and then on this side, we're gonna put that larger spacer up, coming down like this. So let's go over and I'll show you how I want you to clamp that in the vise. So you can see what I did. I sprayed this with Windex. That gets inside of the urethane bushing and it works as a lubricant on the urethane. And then when you're done, the Windex will kind of go away. I just put it in the vise and I wiggled it. That really seated it down in, and I didn't have to open these up. Now, if I didn't get enough, I probably wouldn't have a problem just coming in and getting a crescent wrench and opening this guy up, but it fits in there really good. We'll get this guy in, line that up, and then a tip for you, if you want, you can open up the stabilizer setting to the softest setting. It makes it easier for you to compress, and we're gonna tighten things up. Tighten that guy up there. Now, FOX will tell you factory specs. In this case, I don't have factory specs. 12 millimeter bolt here. I'm gonna go to 75 foot-pounds. And then for the 14, say like 115. I think 125 is probably a little bit higher, but I don't think that's gonna go anywhere. And that's pretty strong. So now we're tightened up. So the last thing you're gonna wanna do is cycle your suspension back and forth and make sure that nothing hits the remote reservoir or any of that. If it does, there's a small little Allen up in here, and FOX will give you some instructions on loosening that up, pivoting that out of the way, and retorquing it. And the last thing you just wanna check is to make sure that your steering stabilizer is not hitting this gusset on the front axle. That's gonna have to do with the spacing of your spacer up here of the steering stabilizer, or you're just gonna come in here and you're gonna give this a little grind. In this case, we're not hitting. With FOX having that offset spacer in there, it's allowed to push down the stabilizer just enough to where we're missing that little gusset there. Putting on the ATS, it's a huge improvement in the steering on the Grenadier. It's lightening up the steering over the factory one, which is, factory steering stabilizer is pretty aggressive. You do have adjustability in this, and it's a real easy install. So, happy trails everybody, thanks.